All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Sensitive Podcast. I'm laughing from some little pre-recording that I did with Mel, but today we are here to talk about the in-between. So that space where something has ended, what's next hasn't fully yet arrived, and it's all a part of the process, but it is part of the process that can honestly feel so disorienting, uncomfortable. It can feel really hard to name. And it's often where we're most tempted to kind of rush ourselves out of it. So today I am joined by Mel Glaze, emerging marriage and family therapist, and we're exploring what it actually looks like to move through these practices without abandoning yourself along the way. So, Mel, I would love to have you introduce yourself a little bit more before we dive in.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I know we've been chatting about having this conversation for quite some time now. But yeah, just to give a little more information about me, I just recently graduated and am stepping into a new career as a couples and family therapist and really realizing that I have a passion for those transition points, like those um working with people when they're navigating big change, identity crisis, job change. And so it's interesting that I also find myself at that point myself. Um, so I have a feeling that this conversation is going to be both like personal and also like kind of theoretical around like what happens when we face these moments of transition and disruption and reorientation to identity.
Yeah. So I will give a little bit more context as well that Mel is actually a friend that I have in real life. That I have met Mel a couple of times. I've been fortunate enough to meet Mel a couple of times in real life. And the last time we're talking about our work and our passions in our work, and both of us were just like, wow, we do such similar work and we have such a similar lens. And we just started talking about different things. And it was really the podcast was born through that in-person coffee shop conversation that we had. We're like, wow, let's really like have a podcast conversation about this. So just wanted to give a little bit of fun background about that. But all right, let's dive into talking about the liminal space. So, when you think about the liminal space, how do you know that you're in it? And what does it actually feel like in real life?
Yeah. I think the liminal space is something that, at least for me, I kind of anticipate coming. Um, but then when I'm in it, like it's sort of an idea for a moment. Like, I knew that I was graduating and I knew that I was stepping into a new career for a while, but liminal to me kind of feels like it's when the idea of something meets the reality of something. Um, where your thoughts or fears or worries like actually are made into form in a way. So that's to me like kind of how I know I'm in the liminal space. I've probably been thinking about it, probably been thinking about what it's actually going to feel like when I get there. Um and then that arrival point of when I do finally land there. Um and I think I experience it as sometimes confusion, like a disorientation, a sometimes there's like frantic like need to like know or clarify, like a really strong searching for clarity typically is present. um and some insecurity, like that's like a lot of how it shows up for me is like insecurity and in a new place.
Hmm. I love tell me that again. When the idea of something meets the reality of something. You said it more eloquently than me.
Yeah, this is something that I've been that has come up frequently in the last handful of years. Because I've noticed that we can fantasize and idealize and dream even about what a situation is going to be like. And then when we get there, we don't know the future. We don't know what reality is. I didn't know 4 years ago that I would graduate during a recession to be starting a business. Like I couldn't have known this necessarily. And so I think that there's kind of like a getting to know the moment for the first time. And yeah, I mean, I always laugh. My calendar, the scheduling of something on my calendar and my actual experience of meeting that moment are so drastically different, that I have to just name that. Like this feels different than how I thought it would feel, and kind of grappling with that like not even a mismatch, but just like I don't know, like a misattunement almost
Mhm.
to the situation.
And I'm picking up on kind of some subtleties underneath what you're saying that I want to name and see if that this feels true for you. And that's that I'm picking up that likely there's been enough times in your life where that thought, an idea of something meeting the reality of something being vastly different, that now you anticipate that and sort of recognize like, oh, I I know I have this idea in my mind that graduating from, graduating and becoming a therapist was going to be like this, but I'm not so sure that it's actually going to be like that because I have a lot of lived experience of all of these past liminal spaces. Does that feel true? Or how would
I
you
feel
say
like
it?
I feel like in a way, yeah, when, I've throughout my life I've made a lot of big moves. Big like geographic moves, big career moves. Um and so yeah, I think that does feel true. Um and I do think there is a level of anticipation um and preparation even, but even still, like you can only prepare for what you expect, and there's still going to be some unexpected things that arise. And so I think this last this last and I can't even say that it's over because I'm right in the middle of it. This current season of transition and sort of evolution of self, um it's come with a lot more that I don't know how to prepare for, that I didn't couldn't have prepared for.
Mhm.
Um, and so that's an interesting, like, kind of place to land.
Yeah. What's coming to my mind the most as you're sharing this is, I've been through a lot of these moments in my life myself. I'm thinking to some really big ones like getting married, and some moves that I did, some career transitions. But the hugest one for me was motherhood, and I think there's so much anticipation around that, and again, so much expectation around that. There's so much other people who are mothers will tell you of what to expect, and then the actual rubber meets the road of the sleep deprivation and the screaming and the reality of the constant 24/7 caretaking that there is no relief from was a big, big shock to my system. But then I'm also thinking of, should I become a mother again? That there's almost this, oh, well, I know what it's like, right? But then, just as you named, I don't know what it's like to do it again. I don't know what it's like to have a toddler and also a newborn. I don't know what it's like for this particular being that's different than my son, right? So, all of these ways, I guess what I'm getting at is that we're so grasping for certainty for our orientation in something that ultimately is unknowable in a lot of ways. Like that we can prepare as much as we can prepare, but there's so much unknown.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I've been having conversations with a friend lately, and we've sort of been describing this. I mean, there's so many names for this. Like you can call it the liminal, the in between, the void. But we've been referring to like kind of what we have to do within it as just like a trust fall. Like there's so much surrender to the present experience that's required. I mean, because you can really brace, constrict, like push up against, and like that's a choice. That's a way to be in it, and then there's nothing good or bad around it. It just it is what it is. Um, but yeah, I feel like those moments where you're really coming face to face with something unknowable, something uncertain, there's a level of trust and surrender that's like required in that process, and that part is quite can be quite terrifying.
Yeah, and I think all and I would love to hear from you. Do you feel like all that you just named, the uncertainty, the trust fall, the surrender, that that's the primary part of what makes this liminal space, this void, so uncomfortable? Or do you feel like there's more to it?
I think those components are definitely a part of it. Like feeling, I mean, no one really enjoys feeling out of control. Like we all like to feel like we have some semblance of a handle on things. And so I do think that is quite a bit of what creates some of the discomfort. But I also think it's like the discomfort of your own sort of I like your own unbecoming and becoming process, your own sort of transformation. Um and how like you kind of have to meet different parts of yourself, um parts of yourself that like you might not want to say out loud, like you know to be afraid or to be worried or to be like to have anxiety around things or to feel really or to feel disappointed. Like there's a lot of feelings that I think make this difficult as well. um Yeah, and I'm sure like as we talk, things will continue to emerge to like really color what the like where the discomfort comes from in this process. But yeah, I definitely say lack of control, lack of uncertainty, and it also just depending even the way that I'm focusing on the lack of, can paint how that process is as well. Um, yeah.
Yeah, and not to harp on the motherhood transition so much, but you're talking about that leaving behind one version of yourself, meeting this new version of yourself. I'm thinking to my motherhood journey as well. It's like that I I felt that especially acutely, I think, and deeply because I became a mother literally like a week before I turned 40. So there was so many years of identity already there.
Mm-hmm.
And then for there to be this transition of who am I now? Like it's just, like you said, there's this disorientation. It's this um I'm leaving behind something that feels so well formed for something that is very nebulous and
Mm.
very like the metaphor that's coming to me is like a baby giraffe just standing on very trembling legs, right? Like there's no sturdy legs underneath it. So, yeah, there's so much discomfort there of what we're moving towards isn't yet fully formed yet. There's not a lot of structure around it
Mm-hmm.
how it was before, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I think any threshold, whether it's matrescence or like marriage or, you know, shifting careers, I just I think that there's a grief process as well
Mhm.
that is a part of it that no one really speaks to really candidly about. Um And like kind of what's required of you to sort of step into a new identity as well. Like it's one thing to like kind of grieve, your identity before motherhood and like who you were. I can't remember I was watching a movie recently, and someone said um this statement to a new mom who was grieving and, basically saying like you'll never not be a mother after this point. Like like there is no going back. There was a you before then. And I'm just remembering the response of this character in this movie being like, "Oh my gosh, like that's terrifying to even consider." Um, but yeah, I think I'm finding myself in this moment wondering like I wonder if it is part of our journeys to navigate what it's like to experience different ways of identifying with ourselves. And it makes sense that when we have something that's really clear and grounded, like that often becomes people's stability, you know? Um, and so I think it's just pointing kind of to where different architecture is needed during transition.
Mm.
Because like you said, yeah, everything sort of gets moved from underneath you and there's nothing really stable enough to like find your footing.
Yeah.
And that can be really um thinking of like my training as a trauma therapist and thinking about like that being the baseline thing that I would focus on with someone who's navigating trauma is like, how can we build some sense of stability, some sense of like a sense of being held?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, my curiosity was really piqued you talking about grief because I don't know, it's so funny. I feel like I've gotten into sharing more and more and more about grief just simply because over the past 3 years specifically, grief has been the portal to my aliveness. And I feel like everything shifted for me when I stopped trying to avoid feeling it and I allowed myself to just be submerged in it. And it was these transitions that invited me, if you would, into this ocean of grief that I hadn't felt. And yet I know, like, I feel myself getting emotional talking about it because it's something that is I honestly, it's been one of the most, just pivotal moments for me is just stopping fighting the grief and just inviting it in and allowing it. Um, and like you're saying, I don't think this is named enough because a lot of these transitions can be viewed as quote unquote good things, right? It's like, well, aren't you so happy that you're stepping into your career as a trauma therapist and as a marriage and family therapist? Like, aren't you so happy that you're a mom after wanting to be a mom for so many years? Aren't you so happy that you're getting married? Like, and then it can be pathologized that you feel grief about this
Mm,
identity that you're leaving behind. And so and then there's all this shame that gets heaped on, right? Of, well, something's wrong with me that I feel grief during this quote unquote happy transition.
yeah. Yeah. I think grief is what's really needing to be acknowledged for so many. And like collectively, like the fact that it is hard to name the painful parts, the parts that are, that do come with fear. And yeah, it needs to be talked about. And I was talking with maybe it was my sister recently, and just like we just see the before and after, like before baby, after baby, before the degree, after the degree. And like I've actually like felt myself being like angry that we don't talk about the discomfort of the middle, because I actually think we're mostly living in the middle. We're mostly living in the middle. We haven't like arrived. We have like these little milestone moments. Like graduation was a milestone moment. You know, getting my license was a milestone moment. But like the transition itself is still occurring. Like as I make a choice, like as you make a choice to engage with the new role that you now occupy, you've now stepped into. And so, yes, there's like a recalibration to like, okay, this is who I was. This is where I've come from. And I think, even when you meet people for the first time, like, you know that you've got a whole history of experience, that has led you to this point. And I think there's a real like natural desire to like have that be known. Um, there's something in it too about being known as you are in a process and just be like even the way people are perceiving you um as you're going through change to like to be understood and to be perceived as in alignment with how we see ourselves, like it doesn't always happen. And I think that's also kind of part of the process, at least when it comes to inviting others into our journey. um because that's been an interesting part of my transition, is like really feeling into like part of the transition that was really underground and really quiet and really alone. Um, and then moving out of that towards honesty and like actually talking about the hard and talking about the confusion and talking about the identity collapse or identity like kind of shake up. Because that makes, at least for me, feel like it kind of pushes up against the shame possibility. It like pushes up and normalizes like, oh, this is like a normal part of of becoming. We just don't really discuss it loudly.
Yeah, it makes me think of how often just like business success is coming to mind for me here, where people are like, "Oh, you're such an overnight success." You know, like you suddenly have like all of these thousands and thousands of followers and you're an influencer and you've got all this money flowing in and all this stuff and it's like, I've been out here grinding for years, and I've been in the middle of this messy middle and this process and I don't
Hmm.
know I don't know of any overnight success, right? It's just the success, like you said, that the starting point that you saw and then the end point that you saw, and somehow you skipped the middle, like,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I think there needs to be, obviously, I think that is one of our goals, you and me having this conversation right now, is to talk about, hey, let's talk about this. Because even as you and I were talking in the coffee shop, yes, nobody talks about this. Let's talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, and not for sake of like, I don't know. I think I'm in this moment around like, how do we be honest without feeling like we're like being honest in spaces that can hold our honesty, I think is actually really important too. So I may not share with this level of depth in every space, you know? I might not choose to like to have this kind of conversation in a like a supervision group necessarily, unless it's one that does feel like really accepting of the difficult feelings I think that come up. Like you learn new things when you step into a new role. And I've found myself really angry at times, when I'm like, why didn't anyone tell me this? And I think, for me, being neurodivergent, I'm like, I wish someone told me like explicitly, directly,
Yeah.
like tell me honestly what I may come up against and don't sugarcoat it. So then I know how to at least at least know what I'm moving towards in a general sense. Um, and so I've really noticed that like as I think about what this is doing to me, being in this process, I'm really recognizing that I have a great amount of passion and fire to to gather in community with with people who are just stepping in, you know, to kind of step into a mentor kind of role where like I haven't figured it out yet. Like I haven't hit that arrival point that really doesn't ever exist. It's just like it's kind of an illusion that we've arrived at a certain point. But I'm really wanting to invite people into the like the raw, honest moment where and I've like continued to hold this really core truth. Like I want people to actually feel like they can like someone can relate to the feelings that they're navigating as they're in the moment of something.
Mhm.
Um and not have it sugar coated and not have it perfectly buttoned up and not have it like these are all the things that I did to like, you know, navigate this season. Like I don't know, I'm still in it. I'm
Yeah.
this is one of the things I'm doing.
Yeah, and I think your point of operating in your discernment of where you're choosing to share those things is so
Mhm.
important that neither one of us are here advocating for you to, in the name of quote unquote authenticity, blasting really vulnerable truths on the internet to
Yeah.
a wide range of people who, like you said, don't have the ability to hold those things.
Right.
But again, really hoping that you can find spaces that can hold that complexity with you and be in the messy middle and not need to have it all buttoned up,
Yeah.
um, etc. Yeah, I love that. When, we've talked a lot about the discomfort so far, the grief, the free fall, the surrender, the uncertainty. Um, when part of you just wants out, like, get me out of here. How do you stay with yourself in those moments instead of trying to escape it?
When I read this question, I was like, gosh, because I would say that this is an area that I'm struggling with. Like in truth, staying in it is really hard. Um, you know, and coupled with like just life and the pressures of like just needing to survive, there is a an amount of grace and compassion that I'm noticing that I'm having to give to myself right now. Criticism and self-judgment and self-hatred is not it. And yet, that's my well-grooved choice. My well-grooved choice is self-shaming. And so focusing on the day-to-day and like just small choices, um, you know, sometimes I choose the thing that's more nourishing and sometimes I don't. And I think like lately it's been the latter. And navigating that with honesty and like just looking at it. I think just like looking at what it is can be really hard. Um but like there's moments where I can stay a little longer. You know, there's moments where I can find someone safe to connect with and to like really express what's actually happening and like let it move. And that's well good, you know, when I've had that, you know, and I take note of those people, those moments. Oh, this is a person where I can like be a mess in front of. Um, and I think that's been more honestly more valuable than feeling like I'm doing it right
Mhm,
because I'm just doing it. I'm just trying
mhm.
to do my best and sometimes I don't do my best.
Yeah, I think that's such an important thing that you bring forward, just namely that we're not always going to stay with ourselves. And can we notice that when it happens? And specifically, can we notice it with self compassion instead of self flagellation? Can we notice it with, oh, like, isn't that interesting that that's happening? And can I offer myself so much compassion that
Yeah.
that felt like it was necessary right now rather than, oh, like, here I go again. Like,
Mhm, mhm. Yeah.
that it's always a process of forgetting and returning and forgetting and returning and forgetting and returning until, right? It's that is the process.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Another element to this that I wanted to bring forward, because I know when we chatted about this episode, this really piqued my interest. You talking about how hard it is to know what you need in these moments of transition. I find that to be so true for myself as well. And I'm curious in your experience, what seems to make that knowing what you need so difficult and how we can start to get honest about what would actually support us.
Mm. Well, for me specifically, and I don't know, I mean, I can't claim that this is like a universal experience, but for me, like socialize as a woman, receiving receiving is really, really uncomfortable for me. Um, and I think part of part of looking at needs is also examining the discomfort of like a naming what you want or need out loud to be witnessed by another person, and the stuff that comes up around just that part. Like you might know in a moment what you need. Like, I need a break. Or like, I need to step outside, I need to go take a drink of water, I need to walk around the block. Like, sometimes sometimes knowing what you want is accessible in a moment. But when you're thinking about like, like, going back to the motherhood example, like when you're thinking about bringing a child into the world, there is a level of preparation that kind of goes in. You have an idea of like, practically like things that you're going to need and stuff like that. Um, but I think you also arrive into an experience, like we were talking earlier, for the first time, not knowing. And I think even just like acknowledging that there's something missing can feel can at times feel really activating. Um, because, for some of us it triggers that like, why am I feeling like this? Like the doubt around the experience. Um, maybe because it's shocking or surprising or new or different or unexpected. Um, like just that part can be like a little world bendy. And I also just don't think we're practiced at this. Like, I don't think that we're there are some people who are really great at like knowing their preferences and knowing their desires and knowing what they want, and like having a real clear sense in how to describe it. Like, I generally like always know the kind of food I want. Like, um, more basic things like that. And so like I've started there with like practical stuff. What preferences do I have around the beverages that I enjoy? Like, I really like these two brands of coconut water, and they help me feel hydrated enough to be able to meet my day. Like, it can be kind of silly and superficial sounding, but I think that those things help us feel held and cared for in a very like baseline practical way. But I think, maybe it's the combination of like being in a new place, stepping into a new identity, that kind of, and like feeling new things. Like the combination of a few of those elements like really makes it so it's hard to even hear yourself. Hard to really like, other than like, I don't like this. This is hard. Like, this is uncomfortable. What do I do? Um, I think sometimes it's just grabbing the easiest first choice. Like we have to eat, like to survive, like we genuinely. And so, can we bring some sort of choice point to that place as like an entry, as like a starting point to just like build, stretch that muscle of like preference. And I mean, and I also realize I'm doing a thing right now where I'm like bringing needs, wants, and preferences. And I do think that there's some nuance around each of those things as well. That's probably worth exploring at some point. I don't know that today is necessarily the place for that, but I don't want to collapse those all together because I think for some, like some people have really strong needs, that to another person could look like a preference. And so I think it's really important to just kind of like put some of that aside in this process of identifying needs.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I will share just in case it's helpful for anybody listening. I was a very parentified child, and that the result of that, I mean, there were many results of that, but the one of the results of that was completely disconnecting me from my needs and my wants and my desires, because everything had to be about how am I serving someone else, right? Like, how am I
Hmm.
fulfilling this role of constantly holding space and holding everything and making sure everything ran, right? And that was a really severe disconnection from my needs and wants that made naming needs, wants, desires incredibly vulnerable. Like there was, and I'm sure that there was the wound on top of that of being a woman in society, and also like there's so much there as well. So it's like multiple things
Multiple things.
stacked, right?
Hmm.
Um, and all of it resulted in naming needs, wants, desires being so charged for me, being so vulnerable. And then, as you mentioned, first of all, if you don't have access to that before one of these major transitions, and then you go through one of these major transitions amidst not having access to that, and it's so vulnerable to even name them, and then you're also heaping vulnerability on top of vulnerability with the fact that you are in the midst of this transition and you're very disoriented,
Hmm.
like, that can make this whole thing be kind of like a powder keg, right? And I will say for me, it was like a powder keg, because, again, there was a lot that I hadn't sorted through around how to express, how to even first of all get in touch with these things, and then how to express them as the next, first of all to myself and then to
Hmm.
other,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
um and then to do that in a way that's actually constructive rather than destructive. So there's
Yeah.
so many steps
Yeah.
to this that I'm naming.
So many.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you bring up the vulnerability piece because my experience is very similar to you in the parentification, eldest daughter. Like, what we do is we lead and we serve and contribute. And when we can't, like a lot of times that service and contribution is like conflated with our sense of value and worthiness. And so it can be like a mess to untangle, to really feel into. How do I acknowledge this, like you said, for myself first, having not had access to this previously? Um, it's a big undertaking. It's a big undertaking when you're in the midst of it.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think it's worthwhile to just name, like, I think we all should be cultivating practices where we are getting familiar with our preferences, with our likes, with our dislikes, um, and I'll bring a little human design in just to this moment, and I know not maybe not all of your listeners are familiar with human design. Um, but like for me, I as someone who doesn't have definition in the solar plexus, which sounds um like I won't be free if someone is mad at me. Like it's very confrontation, like fearful in a way. If I say what's honest and true, if I say what I really need, someone's gonna do, think, say XYZ. And so that's distortion. Like that's like a voice, like an illusion that's keeping me from accessing the freedom of naming a desire or of naming a need. Um, yeah, I'm still sort of untangling that. Like I'm in that right now. And what I'm recognizing even in this moment is like I need to be in conversation. Like I need to be metabolizing this experience in relationship because I think that's like part of how I digest this change. So like I think there's like a piece in it that's like yes, it's like we're talking about the place where we meet another right now. Like the place where we meet relationship and ask for help and support. And that adds a whole nother layer to this.
Yeah,
'Cause
that's actually what I was gonna say. It's a perfect segue into talking about, how these liminal spaces impact your relationships. Like when you're in the midst of this kind of a space, how does it affect the way we show up in our relationships? And how can you stay connected to yourself while you're in the middle of it? I mean, that's perfect because again, any big thing, big transition, liminal space that you're going through, it doesn't just impact you, it impacts the way that you're showing up with other people in your life.
mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. What's the what's the question in there? I think I'm needing to like tee up to this a little differently.
How does being in the liminal space affect the way we show up in our relationships?
I mean, I think when we are meeting a new identity, a new role, when I'm beginning to see this more as like identity is feeling really like heavy lately for me, even though I really enjoy talking about it. Um, so I'm playing a little bit more with like roles and characters and like, what kind of character do I need to be to like meet this moment kind of thing. To like bring a little bit more play and like fun to the discomfort. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think anytime we're at that moment, we're just because of the way that we're being impacted, it's inherently going to impact the people that we're close with. I just recently got married at the end of last summer. Um, and we were joking because we were like, we feel like ever since we got married, someone just like catapulted us into like just a storm of just stuff to navigate, change to navigate. Um, and we're like looking at each other and we're like, we're good. We're good, right? But like, we're not okay, but like, we're good in this. And there's moments where it's not that way. There's moments where, my partner will ask me a very basic question about where I'm at in some process. And I'll like this happened on Sunday. Like I found he noticed me getting defensive about a very like a genuine curiosity that he had about job that I had applied for and like whether or not I was going to be applying for different jobs because where I'm at in this transition of moving into like to becoming a therapist, I wanted to go into private practice first. And doing that during a recession where I'm currently not taking insurance has been really challenging, has been really slow. And so I've had to, I realized at the end of March, I was like, okay, I've got to make a change because like we can't actually survive on this for much longer. So I've got to do something differently. And so there's a lot of pressure too. And I think that pressure, the urgency, like it also creates kind of like it makes it harder to access the things that we're talking about.
Mm.
And so I think that's why the grace and the compassion are really needed because it's more likely than not, like you might respond from defense or from fear. I don't even remember what my response to this was, but I think I was like feeling myself being like, well, I am looking for jobs. Like I have to, I've got to prove something or I've got to have it figured out. And again, those are like distorted voices that are keeping me kind of in a state of victimhood or confinement or like less access to choice. Um, Even when the choices are thin, like there's still choice point. It might not be the choice that I really want, but it is at least a choice point
Yeah.
that can give me some of that
Yeah.
feeling of control that we so desperately want when we're in these liminal spaces.
Mhm. Yeah. So I'm hearing it can impact communication, it can impact it can, it can just impact the dynamic of the relationship. Just to zoom out, speak very high level, big picture. It's going to impact the dynamic of the relationship because you're impacted, right? So it's going to, like, what I would imagine, and you correct me if this doesn't feel true for you, but I think what's so crucial, what has been so crucial in my experience in creating a healthy relationship with my partner is the ability to access that choice point of, okay, I feel something and I've got enough of a pause for me to choose how I'm responding instead of just reacting in a certain way. And I
Hmm.
feel like when there's these pressures that you're talking about, that kind of narrows the ability to access
Yeah.
that choice point. And then you're getting more things that are said or done that are reactionary instead of choosing that response.
Hmm. Yep. Yeah, that feels spot on.
Yeah.
The dynamic, the communication, less room for accessing choice.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, when we're in these liminal spaces, the voids, what does real support look like? So the kind that really actually helps you be felt in it and feel held in it and that you're not being rushed through it.
Yeah, I actually had a friend ask me this question. He's also a therapist and we'll periodically like send voice notes or texts. And I was actually thinking about it this morning because he texted me this morning and was like, "Hey, I'm just checking in on you. You've been on my mind. Like, how are things going?" Um, and that came from a conversation that we had around, like, I think he asked, like, what do I need right now? And I think I said something to the tune of like, I just like need people to be checking in on me right now because because I know that when I'm in this place, like my tendency is to self-isolate because I like have a lot of insecurity around like not about around being seen in vulnerable when I'm feeling vulnerable. Like that just becomes way more difficult for me. And especially like, showing up on social media when I feel like my life underneath is untethered. I don't know I don't have access to that. And so I end up just like quieting in a lot of ways and really like going silent. Um, Now I'm forgetting the question.
But like what do people actually need for support to feel held and not feel rushed through this process?
Yeah. I think it's gonna be really individual, and I think, um, like, it might be small asks. So, like, for me, the ask was, like, just someone to be checking in on me, like, to not feel like I'm forgotten or to feel like I'm, while I'm in this period of readjustment, reorientation, like everyone else has moved on. Like there's this kind of piece about how I'm orienting to where I'm at and where everyone else is that feels really big. Um and so I think it's going to be a matter of really like asking yourself what actually would feel nourishing in this season. It could just be like one person that knows, like that you can be honest with. I think having a place to like be honest and be in community. And I think this particular realization, like to be honest in community, that has just been a part of our conversation since the beginning. Like this is changing the way that I see how we show up in support. Like it's actually impacting how I view my work as a therapist. Um, and like it's got me actually wanting to like pivot and just do group, like to focus on group care rather than one-on-one care, because what I'm needing right now is to gather in community and metabolize what this is really feeling like, because there's a big part of me that's like doubting, like I think there's there's like I have this like big question in my head. I'm like, how did everyone navigate this before me? And like, why didn't anyone tell me that it was gonna feel like this? Like, if I could do it differently, like I would want to know. I would want someone to just at least give me like a warning flag, even if it's just from their perspective. Like I can trust myself to discern whether or not their experience is going to impact me in the same way, generally speaking. But I think I just wanted to know. I think I wanted, and I tell myself, and as I say that, I also think that part of my own ability to survive grad school was ignorance of some of the process. Was like the insulation of like not knowing every little piece of what it takes to become a therapist, how long it takes. I think if someone had told me, hey, just FYI, it might be like 7 or 8 years before you're like actually a licensed therapist, I would have been like, what? What are you talking about? Because I didn't know. So I'm actually like finding some possibility and freedom in in this window of time as well, because I'm kind of letting it change me in this moment.
Yeah.
Like only, I mean, this is like the last 3 days sort of evolution. Like it just, that's what happens.
There's so much in this question about what is actually supportive and what actually allows people to be held and not feel rushed through this process that you've beautifully named and I want to sort of tag on to as well. My brain is going to so many different directions with this. The first piece of this is just I don't mean to be negative, and that's not the intention of what I'm about to say, but I think we are so bad at this as a culture. Um, and mainly because we have so few people who are willing to actually sit with their own pain, that we then have so few people who have the capacities to sit with others in their pain without trying to fix it. And
Hmm.
that leaves folks like what's coming up for me as I think about this question is the literal full body bristle that I get when somebody tries to toxic positivity me out
Mm.
of this place. When somebody tries to get me to put on the rose colored glasses and tell me what's going to be great on the other side, I just want to give a big middle finger and I can't do it, but there are so few people like that, right? And so I think this is part of that discernment again of who are you going to for that support? Do they have the capacity to be with their own pain? And if
Mhm.
they don't, they're not going to be able to be with yours.
Mhm.
And really, that it's also our responsibility to name what we need. Like if you're going to somebody, let's say, for example, that has a history, like I'm thinking of certain family members or people in my life that have a history of trying to rush me out of it and get me to the
Mhm.
nice, tidy, neat bow. I can still go to those people, but I have to really be my own advocate in that moment and name what I need. Like, "Hey, I'm gonna share this with you, and I don't want you to rush me to a solution. I just wanna be seen in my pain right now.
Yeah.
I just want somebody to sit with me in this. I don't need a solution. I don't need to be fixed." And that's so important for your own heart, your own protection in that moment,
Mhm.
right? So A, being choosy about who you're going to, but B, also, if you are choosing to go to somebody who you know may not have the full capacity, really naming that for yourself. Um, and like you're saying, just how desperately we need these spaces more. The other piece of this that's coming up for me is how tricky this has become in 2026 in this digital age with friendships specifically. Like, I just feel like there's so many dynamics around this of like, I've seen so much talk about like, oh, well, like a friend shouldn't be expected to be your therapist. Yes. And also, I think
Mm.
some of the things that we are quote unquote therapizing and saying is therapy is just actually people asking for mutual care,
Yeah. Yes.
right?
Yes.
And so,
Yes.
like, somebody if they're coming to you in like, in a moment of grief and, "Oh my gosh, I just had this really hard thing happen," if you're like, "No, like, go take this to your therapist," like, "Okay, well, you're not actually wanting mutual care, so don't expect me to do that for you either."
Mm.
But
Mhm.
there's just a lot with friendships around that and really being able to cultivate spaces in your life where that sort of mutual care is freely given and received, which is what I hear you saying is so medicinal and what you're really looking to do in your practice as well.
Yeah, I think it's really hard for a lot of people who have not met their inner perfectionist, their inner problem solver, like, and really like it's not sometimes what's needed in those moments isn't fixing or solution finding. I believe that we're probably pretty good at that. Like, pretty good at that reactive response. Like, oh, I gotta fix this. I gotta figure this out. Um, but I love what you're saying about like, if people are limited and you have the people that you have around you, like sometimes it does require you saying, "Hey, I'm not asking for advice. I just need someone to be with me in this because this is feeling really hard." And I think that is the vulnerable part. The being witnessed in the actual experience that you're having with that person not wanting to change it at all. And that is, I experience this still, in some situations where where I'm wanting to save, where I feel the compulsion to try to save, but what's actually needed is presence, like genuine presence, like genuine, I'm with you. I'm with you right now, and this sucks. This is hard. Let's just be in the moment and acknowledging that this is hard. That has been the most healing thing that I've experienced in therapy is just having a moment be suspended and allowed and like drawn out a little longer so that I can get to know it a bit better. and so that I can actually move through the experience and not be holding things. Um, and not that there's nothing wrong with holding things too. Like that's what body does. Like I don't want to like make it this like I have to be doing it like this in order for me to be doing it good or whatever. But yeah, I think a lot of what you're alluding, like what you're sharing is like there aren't people who have enough presence, who have given themselves enough presence the time of day to like really feel. And this is new for me. Like feeling feelings fully, being honest fully, saying it out loud, truly. Like I haven't been conscious of this part of me up until the last, I feel like going to grad school to become a therapist really cracks you open to like insight and awareness in a way that I'm like, okay, too much. Thank you. Don't want to know. I'd like a little more ignorance, please. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't know if that answers the question, but
It
that's what I've
does.
got.
It does. Well, I have one last question before we go into our rapid fire questions here at the end. And that's just if somebody finds themselves in the thick of this right now and just finds themselves wanting it to be over, what would you want them to understand about this part of the process?
I think I'd want I'd want to paint a picture for someone. Um, and this picture involves water. It's a big part of why I named my practice Cross Current Counseling. And you touched on this earlier when you were mentioning like this ocean, like um when we're in the liminal, it can often feel like a swamp. Like things can feel really stagnant, things can feel really murky, things can feel really stinky. Um, but I think at the same time as the swamp is murky, stinky, like it doesn't have the appeal that like the crisp freshness of like, a spring or a lake or something that has got movement going to it. There's still potency and aliveness happening, even when there's something that's feeling stagnant. And the thing that's really been serving me is the reminder like, how can I stay engaged with this? How can I stay connected to this? Like, to be continuing to engage with the process, to be getting more feedback, to be clarifying over time. And I think engagement is connected to movement. And when I'm feeling like there's no one I can talk to, there's not like I don't know enough, or I'm afraid, or I have to keep this, I've got to keep this side job because it's the thing that's going to keep me safe right now. Like, like all these like these moments, like just staying engaged in the process of asking questions. What's one thing I can try this week? What's one brick I can lay down this week as I'm building some architecture around this change? Because stability is needed even in change, just like when you're changing like when a building is going through construction. Like I love the metaphor of scaffolding. You can move it around. You move it around depending on what part of the project you're working on. So, like that would be another question. Like how can you bring in some level of scaffolding, even if it's temporary, to hold and support you during this time? Who is one person? Where is one place that you can go to find access to people that are in a similar place that are talking about this? How can I be choosy about those places, discerning about who I'm listening to? But yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, is there anything that you'd like to say in closing that feels like it might need another moment to wrap up from our podcast today?
I think I mostly wanna say this for myself.
Yeah. Let's hear
I'm
it.
in process and I'm okay. Like, I'm still here. Like, I'm showing up for it, and it's crunchy. It's just the crunchy part.
Mm.
It's not the best. It doesn't always feel the best, but I'm just, like, needing to acknowledge, like, that's where I'm at. There's no arrival point. I don't have the solution, and maybe something will support.
Yeah. It's a beautiful example. Yeah. What do you wish people knew about your experience as a neurodivergent person in the world?
Mm. That I'm mostly always tired all the time. I'm either tired or overstimulated, and there's, like, very few pockets where I'm, like, really loving being neurodivergent.
Mm. Yeah. What's the last thing that truly surprised you?
The last thing that truly surprised me. And this feels kind of like a lame answer, but this is the thing that's coming up. That I would be willing to work a full-time job. That really surprised me. Like, yeah, that I'd be open to that world again was a surprise.
Yeah. Great. And last question, what consistently brings you deep joy?
Run-ins with people in my community. Like, there is nothing that makes me happier than running into, like, a regular at the coffee shop at the grocery store or a neighbor at the cafe down the street. I love a run-in with someone that's, like, in my inner circle out in the world, out in the wild.
That like brought a big smile to my face because I feel like it gave such a beautiful insight into your personality.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah. Well, I can't thank you enough for coming on and having this conversation with me. I want to name that there felt like something so delicious about the pace of this podcast to me. Like, I just really noticed how much slower and more settled my nervous system felt throughout this conversation. It was really
Mm.
beautiful. So, thank you so much for coming and chatting about this with me.
Thanks for having me, Kim.